In 1947, deep within a desert cave, the world stumbled upon something it was never meant to find. It wasn't just ancient ink on parchment, it was a forbidden operating system for our reality, a code so dangerous that empires spent centuries trying to erase it. We've been told it's just a myth, but as our modern systems begin to glitch and fail, this Enoch file is reactivating before our eyes. This isn't a history lesson, it's the original blueprint of our world, and it's revealing that we are rapidly approaching a systemic reset. But how can we be sure? In a world of deep fakes and digital illusions, where does the legend end and the reality begin? To find the answer, we have to look away from the pulpits and go deep into the silent dust of the Judean desert. For centuries, scholars dismissed the Book of Enoch as a late forgery, a piece of medieval imagination with no real anchor in history. But in 1947, that assumption was shattered. A Bedouin shepherd, searching for a lost goat, stumbled into a cave at Qumran, near the Dead Sea. What he found wasn't just old parchment, it was the ultimate system backup of ancient human knowledge. Among the thousands of fragments discovered in those caves, the famous Dead Sea Scrolls, were multiple copies of the Book of Enoch. Think about the weight of that for a moment. These weren't stories passed down by word of mouth through the ages. These were physical manuscripts written in Aramaic, dating back at least 200 years before the birth of Christ. This discovery proved, once and for all, that the Enoch File was an essential part of the spiritual library of the ancient world. It wasn't a myth, it was a primary source. But if this text was so vital, if it was studied by the very people who lived in the shadow of the prophets, why is it missing from your Bible today? Why was it deleted from the official record of the Western world? This is where the story takes a chilling turn. This wasn't a case of a book simply being lost. It was a case of a book being deactivated. As the early church began to form under the shadow of the Roman Empire, the message of Enoch became a threat. You see, Enoch doesn't just talk about morality, he talks about a reality that institutions cannot control. He reveals a world of divine intervention, of celestial rebellion, and of a coming reset that bypasses every earthly king and bishop. The authorities of Rome and the early councils realized that Enoch's visions were too volatile. They spoke of a power structure that made their own empires look like dust. And so, during the Great Canonization, the Enoch File was flagged. It was labeled as apocryphal, dangerous, hidden, and ultimately erased from the authorized narrative. For over 1,000 years, the Western world was kept in the dark, told that these words were nothing more than a ghost story. But the truth has a way of finding a safe house. While the empires of Europe were burning libraries and editing history, the ancient Church of Ethiopia was doing something extraordinary. They weren't just reading Enoch, they were guarding it. They recognized it for what it truly was, a preserved archive of the pre-flood world. In the isolated highlands of East Africa, the complete text of Enoch survived, hidden away from the censors of Rome and the fires of the Inquisition. For nearly 2 millennia, this forbidden archive waited in silence. It wasn't until the late 18th century that explorers brought it back to the West, and not until the discovery at Qumran that its authenticity was undeniable. Think about the implications. We aren't just reading a religious poem. We are accessing a data set that survived a deliberate, worldwide attempt at deletion. Today, when you read these words, you aren't just reading a book. You are bypassing 2,000 years of institutional gatekeeping. You are logging into a forbidden terminal. But why now? Why is this information resurfacing at this exact moment in history? Is it possible that we are only being allowed to see these erased truths because we are finally entering the time frame they were meant to describe? The archaeological evidence tells us that Enoch is real. The history tells us it was feared. But the content tells us something far more striking. It warns us that the chaos we see in our headlines today isn't new. It is a repeat of a catastrophic error made at the very dawn of our civilization. As we witness the rise of technologies that defy nature and the collapse of the moral anchors that once held us steady, we have to ask ourselves, are we ready to face what the ancient world tried so hard to hide? Because the Enoch File doesn't just record the past, it predicts a tipping point. A moment when the imbalance between our power and our wisdom becomes so great that the system itself triggers a purge. And as we look closer at the forbidden knowledge Enoch describes, the parallels to our modern world become impossible to ignore. Are you beginning to see it? The stage isn't just being set, the lights are already on. We have been conditioned to view the story of the Watchers as a simple tale of angelic rebellion, a moral failure leading to divine anger. But when we strip away the religious labels and look at the actual mechanism Enoch describes, a much more terrifying reality emerges. This wasn't just a violation of a rule. It was the introduction of a fatal asymmetry into the human system. The Watchers taught humanity the art of metallurgy, the secrets of the stars, and the manipulation of the physical world. At first glance, these seem like gifts of progress. But look closer. These celestial beings handed the power of the gods to a species that still possessed the instincts of a predator. This is what philosophers call the Promethean Debt. In any stable civilization, power and wisdom must grow at the same rate. If you have the power to destroy a city, you must first have the wisdom to govern your own anger. But the Watchers bypassed that growth. They gave us the tools of total war and the vanity of total self-obsession before we had even mastered the basics of self-restraint. Think about the world you live in right now. We are currently standing at the exact same precipice. We are developing artificial intelligence that can outthink us and CRISPR technology that can edit the very blueprint of life. We are, once again, possessing the fire of the stars while still carrying the prehistoric tribalism of our ancestors. Do you see the pattern? The forbidden knowledge Enoch describes isn't forbidden because it's evil. It's forbidden because it is premature. It is like giving a loaded weapon to a toddler. It isn't a matter of if a catastrophe will happen, but when. When Enoch describes the judgment that followed, we often imagine a distant God throwing a tantrum. But what if we reframe that? What if the Great Flood wasn't just a punishment, but a systemic immune response? Think of the Earth as a living organism. When a specific cell begins to grow uncontrollably, consuming everything around it and threatening the survival of the whole, the body triggers a reset. It launches an immune attack to preserve the total system. This is the hidden variable we often miss. Enoch warns us that the corruption of his day reached a point where the software of humanity was so bugged with violence and forbidden shortcuts that the hardware of the earth could no longer sustain it. The system crashed. Centuries later, we find ourselves in the exact same loop. We have stockpiled weapons we cannot justify and built digital worlds we cannot control. We are accelerating toward a level of power that our current level of ethics simply cannot balance. Is it possible that the fire Enoch saw in our future is not a random act of destruction, but another necessary purge? If a part of the system becomes too dangerous to the survival of the whole, and that part refuses to regulate itself, the system has no choice but to execute a command to self-delete. We often ask, why would a loving God allow such a thing? But perhaps the real question is, how can any system survive if it allows a virus to consume the host? We are living deep in the Promethean debt. We have borrowed power from the future that we do not have the wisdom to pay back today. And as the interest on that debt rises in the form of global unrest and technological chaos, the immune response of the universe is beginning to stir. Are you beginning to feel the shaking? Because when the system resets, it doesn't negotiate with the individual cells. It acts to save the life that is yet to come. The only question is, are you part of the virus or are you part of the cure? Have you noticed that heavy, vibrating anxiety in the back of your mind lately? That persistent feeling that the world is moving too fast? That the ground beneath your feet is no longer solid? Most people call this end times anxiety. They look at the news and see only chaos. But what if the source of this dread isn't just a religious premonition? What if it's a biological reaction to a phenomenon Enoch described thousands of years ago? Today, we are living through something that no other generation in human history has ever faced. It's called the knowledge doubling curve. In the year 1900, human knowledge doubled approximately every 100 years. By 1945, it was doubling every 25 years. But right now, in our time, some estimates suggest that human knowledge is doubling every 12 hours. Think about the weight of that. Every half-day, the collective information of our species expands beyond our capacity to process it. This is the hidden variable that most modern analysts ignore, but it is exactly what Enoch was mapping out in his visions of the final age. He didn't just see events, he saw a state of cognitive entropy, a point where the sheer complexity of the world exceeds the biological limits of the human mind. When you feel like the world is ending, what you are actually experiencing is your brain's survival mechanism triggering an apocalyptic mindset. In neuroscience, we know that when the human brain is flooded with more data than it can organize, it begins to look for the end. It looks for a reset because it can no longer find the pattern. Enoch was the master of these patterns. When he spoke of the heavens being shaken or the stars falling from their orbits, he wasn't just using poetic language to scare you. He was describing a system that has lost its equilibrium. He saw a world where wisdom would be hidden and sinners would increase, not because people suddenly became evil for no reason, but because they lost their anchor. In a world of total information, truth becomes subjective. When everything is known, nothing is certain. This is the groaning of the earth that we feel today. It is the friction of a 50,000-year-old biological brain trying to navigate a digital reality that refreshes every millisecond. We are living in a state of permanent system shock. Enoch's prophecies are the core patterns of this collapse. He saw that before the final reset, there would be a period where truth would be obscured and hearts would turn away from wisdom. Today we see this in the death of objective reality. We see it in the rise of philosophies that mock ancient faith as outdated while offering no replacement but a hollow materialism. But why does this lead to a feeling of the end? Sociologically, a civilization can only survive as long as its members share a common story. But when information doubles every 12 hours, the common story shatters into 1 billion individual pieces. We lose our collective why. Enoch's message to our generation is a wake-up call to recognize the noise for what it is. He isn't telling you to fear the headlines. He is telling you to recognize the entropy. He is pointing out that when the world becomes a falling away of wisdom, it is a sign that the system has reached its limit. Is this still far off? Or are we already witnessing the first major glitches in the human narrative? Look at the rising frequency of mental health crises, the breakdown of the family unit, and the total distrust in every major institution. These aren't just social trends. They are the rumblings of a system that can no longer hold its own weight. We have built a Tower of Babel out of fiber optic cables and silicon, and we are realizing too late that we don't speak the same language anymore. Enoch foresaw that in the last days, the holy ones would need to turn away from the noise and seek a different kind of knowledge, a knowledge that doesn't double every 12 hours because it is eternal. Are you ready to stop being consumed by the entropy? Because the apocalyptic mindset isn't a curse, it's a compass. It is your soul telling you that the current system is temporary. It is the immune response of your spirit, urging you to look for a reality that cannot be shaken. Enoch's vision is not just a warning of a coming judgment. It is a mirror reflecting the state of your own mind in an age of total distraction. He is asking you, in a world where everything is changing at breakneck speed, what remains in you that is rooted in the unchanging? The chaos you see is not a myth. It is the predictable outcome of a world that has traded wisdom for data. And as we witness the stage being set for the grand arrival of the king, we must realize that the first battle isn't fought on a battlefield. It is fought in the silent spaces of your own heart against the spirit of the age. Are you listening? Because the seventh prophecy isn't just about what happens to the world. It's about what happens to you when the world can no longer tell you who you are. The lights are already on. The patterns are clear. The only question is, will you stay lost in the noise, or will you find your way back to the architect? We have been conditioned to see judgment as a legal trial, a cosmic courtroom where a distant judge weighs your mistakes against your virtues. But when you look at the mechanics Enoch describes, a much deeper reality is revealed. This isn't a legal sentence. It is a law of spiritual thermodynamics. Think about the nature of fire. In our physical world, heat is a catalyst. It doesn't just destroy, it refines. It forces a state of thermal decomposition where unstable, complex structures break down, leaving only the elements that can withstand the energy. This is the hidden key to Enoch's vision. The fire he saw coming upon the earth isn't a weapon of divine anger. It is a frequency of absolute truth. It is a cosmic screening mechanism designed to separate the eternal from the temporary. Look around at the world you live in today. We have built massive, intricate layers of social masks, digital identities, and ego-driven status. We have constructed a civilization out of chaff, things that look impressive but have no internal weight. Enoch warns us that a time is coming when the vibration of the universe will shift. And in that moment, anything that is not rooted in truth will simply begin to dissolve. This is why the righteous have nothing to fear. In thermodynamics, gold doesn't fear the furnace. It is only in the furnace that its true nature is revealed. Are you beginning to understand? You don't earn your way through this judgment by performing acts of religious labor. You survive it by maintaining your internal frequency. In a system under extreme stress, only the parts that are synchronized with the architect of that system can remain stable. The chaos you see in our society today, the collapse of morality, the death of objective truth, the rising unrest, this is the shaking before the heat. It is the friction of a world that has lost its anchor, grinding against the reality it was meant to reflect. If your identity is rooted in the shifting shadows of this era, if you are defined by your career, your politics, or the applause of the crowd, you are part of the structure that is scheduled for decomposition. You are unstable matter in a refining fire. But Enoch points us to a different way. He describes those who remain hidden and steadfast. These are the individuals who refuse to synchronize their souls with the decay of the world. They keep their internal frequency tuned to the eternal. This is the refiner's fire described by the prophets. It isn't meant to destroy you. It is meant to make you whole. It burns away the parasites of ego and the rot of compromise until only the jewel of your true spirit remains. So the question isn't whether you can pass the test. The question is, what are you made of? When the heat of the truth reaches your life, when the masks are melted and the status is gone, what is left? Is there a remnant of the divine within you that can stand the light? Enoch's vision is a call to audit your own soul. Stop trying to do enough and start focused on being real. In a world of total entropy, the only thing that survives is what is indestructible. Is your heart tuned to the noise, or is it tuned to the silence of the Creator? Because the screening has already begun. The temperature is rising, and the fire will eventually declare exactly what sort of work you have built. Are you ready to lose everything that isn't you so that what is truly you can finally shine like the stars? Because when the reset comes, the fire will not negotiate with your excuses. It will only recognize your essence. The lights are on. The furnace is ready. The only question is, will you be consumed by the fire, or will you be revealed by it? We have been conditioned to see the end of the world as a final stop, a brick wall where human history simply crashes and dies. But when we apply a different lens to Enoch's visions, a far more profound pattern emerges. What we call the apocalypse isn't a finish line. It is what scientists call the Great Filter. In the study of advanced civilizations, there is a haunting question. Why is the universe so silent? The leading theory suggests that every intelligent species eventually hits a wall. They reach a point where their technological power exceeds their moral maturity, and they simply disappear. They fail to pass through the filter. Enoch was the first to document this systemic failure. Before the flood, he witnessed a civilization that had mastered metallurgy, celestial mechanics, and genetic manipulation. They had all the power of the gods, but they used it to fuel their own ego and violence. They didn't just die in a flood, they hit the great filter and they failed to adapt. Think about this for a moment. This is not a story about an angry god drowning people. This is a story about a civilization that reached a dead end in its own evolution. Enoch's writings act as a field guide for a cognitive migration. He tells us that when a system reaches total entropy, when truth is obscured and violence is celebrated, the only way to survive is to move to a higher state of consciousness. This is the hidden meaning of the remnant. In every major reset Enoch describes, a small group remains, But don't think of them as just the lucky few or the especially religious. In the language of evolution, the remnant are those who have successfully adapted to the laws of a higher reality. They are the ones who refuse to be defined by the material greed of their era. They are the ones whose internal frequency remains synchronized with the architect while the rest of the world was lost in the noise. Today, we are standing at the exact same threshold. We have built a world centered on material consumption, the endless taking and using of the Earth's resources. But the great filter is appearing before us once again. Our current model of existence has reached its limit. We cannot consume our way into the future. This is why your end times anxiety is so intense right now. It is your soul recognizing that we are hitting the wall. Enoch is showing us that the day of the Lord is actually an evolutionary upgrade. It is a migration of the spirit from a broken, material-focused system to a reality rooted in pure awareness and righteousness. The new heavens and new earth isn't a different planet. It's a different way of being. Centuries ago, Enoch saw the elect one taking his throne to change the face of the earth. We often think of this as a political takeover, but look closer. It is a fundamental shift in the operating system of our reality. It is the moment when the remnant, those who have prepared their hearts and refined their minds, finally step into the role they were designed for. Are you preparing for a diaster, or are you preparing for a migration? If you are only stockpiling food and weapons, you are still playing by the rules of the material world, the world that is currently being filtered out. But if you are refining your spirit, if you are seeking the wisdom that does not change, you are becoming filter-proof. You are adapting to the frequency of the kingdom that is coming. Enoch's vision reveals that we aren't just waiting for a destruction, we are waiting for a manifestation. The great filter is not meant to destroy life, it is meant to purify it. It ensures that only those who have mastered self-restraint, truth, and love can inherit the power of the next age. It is a cosmic safety protocol. As we witness the collapse of our current systems, the political unrest, and the technological Tower of Babel we've built, recognize it for what it is. It is the friction of a civilization hitting the filter. The question is no longer, when will it end? The question is, who will you be when the migration begins? Are you clinging to the sinking ship of materialism, or are you ready to step through the threshold? Enoch saw it, he walked through it, and he left us the map. The reset is not coming to end your life, but to end your illusions. The stage is set, the filter is active. Are you ready to evolve? So after everything we've uncovered, from the forbidden archaeology of the Dead Sea to the biological entropy of our era, the question remains, where does this leave you? We have been conditioned to look for salvation in the wrong places. We've been told that if we just follow the right political leader, or donate to the right institution, or hide within the walls of a traditional church, we will be safe. But look around. The very structures we were told would protect us are the ones currently dissolving in the fire of their own corruption. Enoch didn't leave behind a religion. He didn't leave behind a cathedral or a political manifesto. He left behind a manual for the survival of the human spirit. Today, many feel a deep, burning frustration with modern religious institutions. You see the greed, the compromise, and the desperate attempt to stay relevant in a world that has moved on. If you feel that the church has failed you, you are not alone. In fact, that feeling is a primary sign that you are hitting the great filter we discussed earlier. The institutions are failing because they were built for the material age, an age that is currently being filtered out. Enoch's message is a call to radical spiritual autonomy. He is telling you to stop looking for a gatekeeper to grant you access to the architect. The Enoch File is an open source code. It belongs to anyone with the courage to run it. So what is the action? What is the new frequency you must set? First, you must recognize that your primary battlefield is not the economy or the voting booth. It is your own attention. In an age where knowledge doubles every 12 hours, your attention is the most valuable currency in the universe. If your mind is constantly synchronized with the noise, the fear, and the vanity of the digital watcher system, you are essentially downloading the virus of entropy. To set a new frequency, you must perform a deliberate internal audit. Ask yourself, what in me is eternal, and what is just a temporary social mask? This is the refining fire we talked about. It begins with the decision to stop participating in the lies of the era. When you refuse to compromise your integrity for cultural acceptance, you are filter-proofing your soul. You are stabilizing your internal frequency. Enoch described the hidden ones, the righteous who would shine like the sun. They weren't famous. They weren't powerful in the eyes of Rome or the ancient empires. They were simply people who remained unfused from the corruption around them. They maintained their internal software in its original, pure state. You must realize that you are not waiting for a judgment to happen to you. You are currently in the process of deciding which side of the filter you belong to. Every time you choose wisdom over data, every time you choose compassion over tribalism, and every time you seek the silence of the Creator over the roar of the crowd, you are migrating your consciousness. The seventh prophecy isn't just a warning about a coming fire. It is an invitation to become fire-resistant. It is a call to build a life out of materials that cannot be melted. Integrity, truth, and a direct, personal relationship with the source of all life. Stop waiting for an external hero to fix the system. The system is scheduled for a reset. Your task is to ensure that your own data set, your character, your spirit, your essence, is worth preserving in the new system. Enoch was taken without tasting death because his frequency was already synchronized with the place he was going. He had already migrated long before the flood arrived. Do you see why this matters so much right now? You are watching this video not because of a random algorithm, but because you are among the few who are actually looking for the nguồn, the source code. You are part of a growing remnant of people who have realized that the old story is over. You are the hidden ones Enoch spoke of. You are the ones who hold the evolutionary code for the next chapter of the human story. So, take heart. The shaking you feel isn't the end of the world. It is the end of an illusion. The chaos is simply the friction of the old system trying to hold on to a reality it no longer fits. Your action is to stand firm, to stay alert, to keep your frequency high and your heart anchored in the unchanging. Because when the reset is complete and the mask of this world finally melts away, only those who have become truth bearers will remain. The fire is coming not to destroy you, but to set you free. Are you ready to stop being a cell in a dying body and become a seed for a new creation? The choice is not for tomorrow. The choice is for this exact moment. Choose the frequency of the King. Choose the wisdom of Enoch. Choose to be the one who stands when everything else falls. Because you don't just belong to this time. You belong to the eternal. And the architect is already calling you home? The evidence we've explored today points to a reality that is far more complex than a simple religious warning. We have looked at the physical ink of the Qumran scrolls, the terrifying asymmetry of our modern technology, and the neurological overload of an era where knowledge doubles in the blink of an eye. But as we reach the end of this journey, you must realize that this information is not just a curiosity to satisfy your intellect. It is a weight. It is a responsibility. For thousands of years, the Enoch File was hidden, erased by empires and ignored by the masses. But today, it has found its way to you. And in the logic of the universe, once you have seen the source code, you can never go back to being just a part of the simulation. We are currently standing at the exact point Enoch described, the moment when the friction between our power and our wisdom becomes unbearable. To many, this looks like the end of the world. They see the wars, the moral decay, and the environmental collapse, and they conclude that the Creator has abandoned the project. But that is a fundamental misunderstanding of the process. The world is not ending. It is simply changing its operating system. Think of the judgment not as a fire of destruction, but as a fire of system migration. The old OS, the one built on the ego, on material greed, and on the illusion of separation, is glitching beyond repair. It cannot handle the frequency of the coming age. It is being deleted to make room for a reality that is rooted in truth and the manifestation of a new level of consciousness. You are the beta testers of this new reality. The feeling of dread you carry is actually the system shock of your soul trying to detach from a dying interface. Enoch didn't leave these words for the people of his own time. He explicitly stated they were for a remote and future generation. He was writing to you. He was telling you that when the lights of the old world begin to flicker, you must not panic. You must focus on your internal stability. You must ensure that your own character, your personal data set, is compatible with the world that is being born. What does that mean in practical terms? It means you stop playing the games of the material era. You stop seeking validation from a system that is scheduled for a reset. You stop feeding the entropy with your fear and your anger. Instead, you begin to operate on the new frequency today. You seek wisdom that is eternal rather than data that is temporary. You become what Enoch called the hidden ones. The architect is not coming to judge you for your mistakes. He is coming to see if you have become a creature of the light. You now hold the keys to the forbidden terminal. You know that the archaeology is real, the patterns are clear, and the great filter is active. You are no longer a passenger on a sinking ship. You are a navigator in a cosmic migration. The stage is set. The lights are already on. The seventh prophecy is not a warning for the world. It is an alarm clock for your soul. Will you hit the snooze button and go back to the illusions of the noise? Or will you stand up, take your place in the remnant, and walk as a child of the new dawn? The choice is yours. And the system is waiting for your input. Stay alert, stay refined, stay in the light. The reset has begun. We'll see you in the next chapter.